Hey guys, thanks for watching my previous Final Fantasy VII video. The was there time travel in original Final Fantasy VII? The Rebirth theory and preparation. Thanks so much. It did so well. Like, just wow. Anyway, I am working on another video to dive more into some of those things that we talked about in the other video. But this just came out about an hour ago. 129 rapid fire questions answered about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I thought I would just watch it and just see if there's anything is said here that we could kind of talk about. So let's see let's see what we got here.
Are you a good sport?
まあケースバイケースかな。
Case by case.
What's
I
the
guess.
best remake in gaming history?
リメイク
Remake.
FF7 リメイクです。
Yeah.
Why did you want to change certain story details with Final Fantasy VII Remake series?
原作を知っているユーザーにも楽しんでもらうためですね。
Do these
So wait, why did you want to change?
FF7 リメイクです。
Why did you want to change certain story details with Final Fantasy VII Remake series?
To have users that know the original title have fun with this as well. Yeah. Okay.
原作を
Doesn't
知
tell
っ
us
ている
much,
ユーザー
but
に
yeah.
も楽しんでもらうためですね。
Do these changes make this a multiverse story?
それはお答えでき
I can't answer that. So he's like, does this make it a multiverse story? I can't answer that. Yeah, of course he can't. Because then half the theories would disappear in a second if he said, yeah, it's just multiple timelines. That's it. You got it.
できないですね。
What's the best multiverse piece of media?
スパイダーマンは素晴らしいですね。
Spider-Man.
What was that
Yeah,
thing in
it's pretty
Remake
good,
that
I
kept
guess.
trying to keep the story elements the same called?
ウィスパー。
What were the things in the Final Fantasy VII Remake that kept trying to keep the story the same?
ウィスパ
What does it mean now that the whispers are gone?
ー。それはリバース。
So what does it mean that the whispers are gone? Please stay tuned for that one in Rebirth. We've already seen in trailers that they are in the background of some scenes and stuff. So they're there, but, you know, as I discussed in my other video, I don't think that they're just destiny mechanic. That's it. It seems like they've been repurposed for something else. Sephiroth is now in control. Genova seems to be influencing them heavily based on their design. We talked about that in my other video. But yeah, so stay tuned. Yeah, we see him again in Rebirth, okay? So one of the things that people said before too was, well, at least we killed those things and they're gone and we don't have to worry about them anymore because I didn't like that part of the story. Well, they're here again. But like I said, we don't fully understand the nature of those things. And so I think it's fine. I don't think it's a bad thing that they're going to continue using those as some kind of device, perhaps to help Sephiroth create the future, right? Okay.
そうお楽しみにしてください。
Does it at least mean that catching a chocobo is easier this time around?
人によるかもしれないですね、そこは。
Are all chocobos the same in Rebirth?
チョコボによって能力は
Each chocobo have a different ability.
What kinds of abilities
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad. We kind of saw that in the trailer.
can chocobos have?
はい、空を飛べたり、
Some can fly, some can climb mountains, some can swim through the oceans. There's many abilities. So, like, what else? I wonder when he says there's many, if he just is summing up the ones that he just mentioned, or if there's more.
山を登ったり、海を登ったり、さまざまな能力があります。
Do all the chocobos smell the same?
私は似ていると思ってますね。
Do they smell pretty bad?
馬に
Might
近い
be
と私は
similar
思って
to
い
a
ます。
horse, he says.
How faithfully does the story of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth follow the original?
In a big picture, I do believe it follows quite faithfully. Kind of juicy there. So in a big picture. So, you know, there are some people that have theories that the story will deviate only to get us back to the original, basically. And the ride of not knowing is part of the fun, but ultimately we're just kind of heading in the same direction. Some people have that theory. You know, I think that I think Remake is an opportunity for them to show how Sephiroth will achieve all of the things he said he wanted to achieve in the original. I think that we're going to see some more of that. But I do think there will be some differences. Okay, like I don't think, and in remake part 1 at the end, there's flashes, and Aerith kind of looks at Red 13 after they get those flashes, and he's kind of like, "This is a glimpse of tomorrow if we fail," and it kind of implies that maybe the original ending is like the bad ending or something, right? But it's not clear. It's really not clear if that's like a trick, or we're meant to believe that's the bad ending, but then maybe we discover that's fine. I don't know. We'll see. I do hope that the remake project goes a little bit beyond actually where OG original ended and has some more to say and more to show and takes into account some of the things that have deviated. So let's see. Okay. So in a bigger picture, I believe it follows quite faithfully. So, okay.
大きい意味では非常に忠実に
But not totally.
なぞっていると思います。
How is Zack still around?
Challenging
難しい
questions.
質問
He says, I wonder how he is alive. Yeah. I wonder too. We don't know the exact mechanism, right? We don't know who decided he should live or what. We don't really know. Was it Sephiroth? Was it Aerith? Was it just the Whispers? Who is it that was able to affect something to keep Zack alive? We don't know still. Big mystery. And what is his role? Yeah, I don't know. We should discuss that maybe in a video.
ですね。どうやって生きているんでしょうかね。
How does Zack being around affect Cloud?
そうですね。
So not just Cloud, but Zack's existence has an impact throughout the world of Final Fantasy VII. Yeah. He doesn't say remake there, but I can't tell if that's what he means. Does he mean the compilation?
クラウドというより、この FF7 の世界全体に対してザックスを通していろんな問いかけをしています。
Why isn't Crisis Core Reunion part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake canon?
What? What does he mean by that? That's a weird question. And the answer, because the remake itself is a unique world distinct from the other titles.
リメイク自体は他の今のコンピレーションしてる作品とは違う独立
Wait, what? Wait a second. The interviewer says, why isn't Crisis Core part of the canon? It totally is. And then he answers and is like, because the remake itself is... Is there a translation issue going on here? That was a weird question. Because the remake itself is a unique world, distinct from the other titles. That makes it sound like the remake is not like part of the compilation, that makes it sound like we have all of the compilation material and that's the canon for Final Fantasy VII, even though there's like contradictions between like Crisis Core and the original, for example, like at the Nibelheim incident. And then he's saying the remake's like its own entity. What? So I don't get that. I really don't understand this answer. It seems like, yeah, I've said before that remake seems to be the amalgamation of the compilation. So maybe that's what he means. It is like, well, remake's its own distinct thing because it takes all of the compilation and it sort of like makes that all work in one world now, instead of that all being distinct projects with different visions. It's all like one vision. We draw from all the compilation. It's all one vision. And so, that's why it's distinct. But to say that Crisis Core is not canon because the remake is a distinct, unique world or something, it's so weird. Like, of course it's canon because something has changed about Zack's fate from Crisis Core to remake. Strange answer. Really weird. I feel like it's almost like he's answering without like acknowledging what the questioner said. Okay, super weird.
した世界設定で描いているからです。
Do you think people would still benefit from playing Crisis Core Reunion in order to learn more about Zack?
Of course.
Of course.
You ever just listen to Final Fantasy music?
はい、もちろん。
Yeah, when I was a student. It was my vibe.
学生の頃マイバイブルでした。バイブルって言われ
Do we call it that?
なんて言うんだろう。
I definitely listened to it.
学生の頃サウンドトラックがよく使
I
って
had
い
the
ました。
soundtrack, listened to it a
What's
lot.
the best Final Fantasy soundtrack?
もう FF7 のサウンドトラックをものすごくよく聞いてました。
How does the remake series being split across multiple games affect the overall experience?
やっぱり
I think the biggest merit is for us to be able to stay loyal and really depict the very expansive worldview of the Final Fantasy VII title. So the biggest merit is to stay loyal to the worldview of Final Fantasy VII. And it's really, translation's weird on this. To depict the very expansive worldview, they just mean very expansive world, I think. Because the worldview is like your philosophy about something, right? So kind of translated oddly to me there. But he's just saying we can stay loyal and depict the very expansive world of the FF7 title. Yeah, I think it's great that it's a trilogy so that they don't have to leave out anything and they can add in whatever else.
FF7 の非常に大きいストーリー世界観っていうのをちゃんと忠実に表現できるというところが一番のメリットだと思います。
What is the best direct sequel in Final Fantasy history?
Lightning Returns, he says. You know, I've actually never played that. Once I played 13, I didn't think it was that good, so I didn't come back for the sequels. But I was told the sequels were pretty good by everyone that's played them. They were like, oh yeah, 13.2 is better than 13, and 13.3 wasn't bad. I honestly never played them, so I can't really say much about it.
Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13はとてもいい作品だと思っています。
Did Final
Maybe
Fantasy
I'll have to
VII
check 'em out.
Rebirth really need to be on multiple discs, or did you just do that for nostalgia?
まあ両方で
It's
すね。
both. He says it's both.
Were there any other games in the Final Fantasy series that the team considered to remake before settling on 7?
北瀬は
He says, I believe Katase thought of a couple. Like what? Final Fantasy VI? I do think a Final Fantasy VI remake would be a massive announcement. You know? Like imagine once the 7 remake trilogy is all over and everything. Could you imagine a Final Fantasy VI remake on the scale of 7? I know some people are probably like, no, but no, dude. 6 is amazing. There's so many characters and everything, and the world is great. I would love to actually see that given the Final Fantasy VII remake treatment. I don't mean you have to add whispers or anything. That's not what I'm talking about. Plus, as I've said in my other video, there's potential precedent for all the shenanigans, you know, in remake from the original. But anyway, a 6 remake, I feel like that would be one that I'd get really excited about, for sure.
検討していたと思います。
Do you think we'll ever get Final Fantasy X-3?
私もプレイしてみたいです。
I'd like to play
Can
that
you do your
too.
best-
He just laughs about it. I don't know why he laughed about it, but a lot of people wanted that. I don't know. I'm indifferent right now about 10-3.
Tidus laugh?
やばいね。ティーダどう笑ったっけ？ティーダ。
How does he laugh
ティーダど
again?
う笑う？
I can bring it up if we wanted to.
こんな笑ってたっけ？
You can hear him. Dude, you can hear him in the background. Oh man, I still remember that as a kid playing that scene. And Titus, I say Titus, I'm sorry, I can't help it. Titus, just laughing like that, and me being like, "What in the hell?" But it's because the voice acting back then, the direction for it was just so limited, you know. And here you have to fit it onto the Japanese exactly, you know. There was no like localization really, you know, for the direction. It's great.
What's the silliest moment in Final Fantasy history?
ファイナルファンタジー6のケフカはす
Kefka. So, hey, I just said it would be cool if they remade 6, and he goes, a really silly character for me is Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. I wonder what he means, if he just means the design. Kefka is kind of like the Joker from Batman. You know, he's like a clown that's totally diabolical and chaotic, right? Yeah, kind of weird that he says this a silly character, a really silly character. For me, maybe he misunderstood the word silly. Like maybe he just interpreted the word silly differently there. Like a silly character to me is like Kate Sith or I don't know. Like what's the one Q from Final Fantasy 9? You know, oh man, I'm blanking on her name, like Kina or something. Sorry, I'm blanking on the name of that character. But you know, there's silly characters. But okay, Kefka.
すごく私の中で好きなキャラクターですね。面白おかしいキャラクターとして。
What's your favorite moment from the original Final Fantasy VII?
一
The
番
most memorable scene for me is, of course, Aerith's fate at the Forgotten City. That's his most memorable scene for him. For me, the most memorable scene is the intro in Bombing Mission. Like that whole intro leading up to Cloud jumping off the train with the music, the do 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 do. As a kid, that was like I loved the atmosphere that created as a kid. I was very young too, and so to me it was like just right then and there. I was like I can still vividly remember being a kid playing that in the basement with a friend. He was showing it to me. We like rented it, you know, and I didn't really play RPGs, and so that whole thing, and then getting further into the Mako reactor with the atmosphere that's created from the music at that part, the that whole part, the dun 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 dun, right? That whole section, so cool, man. I remember just being like, dude, I'm intrigued. You know, I couldn't say that. I probably wouldn't have said that word as a kid, but I was definitely drawn in, sucked in, intrigued. That was, to me, is the most memorable thing. Not to diminish any other scene or anything, but for me it was.
一番こう記憶に残ってるのはやっぱりこう
Aerith's
エアリス
fate, he says.
のワスラルル都のシーンですね。
You know, people are worried about that scene in Rebirth, right? And you know, if that's his most memorable scene from the original, can we confidently say that they don't want to change that exactly? Even if they want to add a new mystery to it and something happens right after or during, you know? I don't know. It's hard to say. We still don't know. I don't want to know either. I want to experience it, you know? When
What was your favorite moment in Final Fantasy VII
He says, what is your favorite moment in Final Fantasy VII Remake?
コルネオの
When the Hell House comes out as a boss at Corneo's battlefield. That's my favorite scene. It's kind of weird. Kind of a weird answer. That's his favorite scene in the remake. That's interesting. I don't know. It doesn't. You'd think it'd be something more dramatic, you know, like more character moment type thing. But I don't know. I love the edge of creation conversation between Cloud and Sephiroth, and I love the interaction between Aerith and Marlene. You know, when the music at that part with the performance from the kid actor that plays Marlene really like pushes the emotion in that scene, where she's worried about what's going to happen to the bar and she's scared. That was a great scene too. So I don't know if those are my favorites exactly, if they're, you know, but that from the top of my head, those come to mind. I love the scene in Chapter 2 when Sephiroth appears in the alleyway to Cloud and talks about their moments together and all of that, and about how he killed his mother and everything. Really good scene there.
闘技場で
There's so many actually in Remake, but yeah.
ヘルハウスがこう
So Hell House is his favorite scene. Kind of weird.
一番好きです。
How does Red 13 ride a chocobo?
肉球で
He uses his paws to grasp tightly onto the
じり
ropes.
とロープを掴んでます。
Will we see Red 13 trying to stand on two legs again?
This is a good question because people are wondering: is it gonna get goofy in Rebirth? Is Red 13 gonna wear the Shinra outfit, and try to blend in like he did in the original?
多分皆さん
He says we'll likely be able to answer that favorably. There's got to be something, right? Like, even if he doesn't wear it for a prolonged period of time, there has to be some kind of scene where they put it on him and they're all like, dude, how are we supposed to fool anyone with you wearing that? We'll see.
期待にお応えできると思いますね。
Does anyone in the party comment how weird it is that he tries to ride chocobos and stand on two legs?
パーティーいや
It's really natural for him.
自然と馴染んでますね。
He
happens
kind
if
of
Red-
smiled when he said that. It's really natural for him. That's kind of funny.
Red 13's tail gets extinguished.
命尽きる。
So is he going to die, or that's kind of funny. Like, if the fire goes out on his tail, does Red 13 just die?
ですかねあれは。
Who on the Super Smash Bros. Roster did Cloud get along with the best?
マリオ、
Mario.
Who do you think annoyed him the most?
ドンキーコング、
Donkey Kong.
How many times did he tell
Donkey Kong? I would say Jigglypuff. That would annoy me the most.
Mario that he was in Soldier?
7回。
How many times did he tell Mario he was in Soldier? 7
Did
times.
Sephiroth get along with anybody on Smash Brothers?
セフィロスはもちろんクラウドと仲がいいと
Sephiroth
思っ
was
てい
on
ます。
good terms with
What's the
Cloud
wilder
during his time in Smash Brothers. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's a fighting game.
crossover? Super Smash Brothers or Kingdom Hearts?
もちろん
Of course, Kingdom Hearts. I love Disney,
デ
he
ィズ
says.
ニー大好きです。
What's the best
Except what they did to Star Wars. No thanks.
summon in Final Fantasy history?
私ファイナ
Bahamut Zero is his favorite summon.
バハムートゼロ。
I mean, when I was younger, and I'm sure a lot of you would say this, Knights of the Round was the coolest summon because it just killed everything. And it was like, it's like a full minute summon. Look at, and you like show your friend, and then you'd be like, okay, can we not use this summon actually? Because it's just, I can't, that's all I see is this summon.
ゼロだっけ
Or how about Bahamut Zero with like W summon and Quadra Magic, and you just mime it and you're like watching it over and over and over again.
ゼロでいいんだっけあれって。貝って言うんだっけなんか子供心に漢字に憧れてたのをすごく記憶に残っています。
So he says Bahamut
What's the
Zero.
best Sid in Final Fantasy history?
私
From
FF12
FF12, huh?
のアルシドは
I liked the Cid in Final Fantasy 16 actually. 16 I haven't really spoken about that on YouTube outside of comment sections, but I have plenty of criticisms of that game. But Cid was excellent in Final Fantasy 16. I like Cid in Final Fantasy 8 as well. I like his role there. Thought it was cool. Of course, Cid in Final Fantasy 7 was always cool. I always liked getting to that point in the story and recruiting him and stuff in OG FF7.
ちょっと指導を少しもじりつつすごく独特なキャラクターで好きでし
Have you ever bought flowers from someone on the street?
た。ないですね。
He says no.
Do you guys have any black materia around here?
あります。
Yes.
If you could have any materia to use in your daily life, what would you choose?
見破るマテリア
He。says assess materia or sense in the original game. That's kind of interesting, right? He just wants to read people's bestiary, their description. You'd think you'd say like cure or asuna materia so that you could like heal people. How about revive? Although revive only brings you out of unconsciousness. Apparently, it's not supposed to revive you from death, right? I don't know. Although OG FF7 has a death status, that can instantly kill you. It's called death, and it's different than getting KO'd, apparently. What about regen, so that you can just rejuvenate health over time? What about time materia, to slow things or speed them up or stop them? The other ones are quite destructive, luck materia. Maybe that would be kind of nice. If you've ever seen the show Supernatural, there's an episode where they get a rabbit's foot and like it's got a curse to it, but when you're using it, it makes everything go your way. Yeah. So kind of interesting. He said assess materia. It's like he's thinking more practically though. I don't think, you know.
Yeah.
Why?
やっぱり私いろんな
he says I interact with a lot of people, so it'd be nice to find out more intel about them. Yeah,
人と関わるんで、いろんな人のいい点、いろんな情報を知れるのは魅力的です。インタビューもきっとうまく答えれます。
I'll be able to do better interviews too.
So you trying to find out my HP?
Yes.
Yes.
その通りです。
Should I be worried?
いやいや
You have a massive amount of HP, and you're going to be challenging.
すごい HP が高くて、
All right,
これはなかなか
getting nerdy here. All right, we're getting
If you
real
could
nerdy.
speak to the planet, what would you say?
日本は地震が多いんで、
Japan has a lot of earthquakes, so I'd say please tone it down on the earthquakes. Yeah. I'll just keep moving on.
地震をやめてほしいですね。
What is your promised land?
私やっぱりこう
I'm a game creator, so I won't have to have a future where it's easy to do so. I want to have a future where it's easy to do so, and that's my goal. That's the promised land that I'm aiming for. So he's just fantasizing about a life where he can make the games that he wants to make, and there aren't the struggles that come with that, the stresses. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, it would be nice. A lot of people would like to do the job that they want to do and not have the hang-ups, right? Yeah, that would be kind of nice, I guess. I guess, like, if we're thinking practically, like, for myself, it would be really cool to have, people that I could hire one day that could do things like editing and mixing and mastering and things like that for projects and for creative endeavors that I have, so that I wouldn't have to do all of the gritty detail work. That like I could just create, and I'm talking about more than just like YouTube stuff. But like, yeah, that would be kind of a cool promised land, so to speak,
こうゲームクリエイターなんで、やっぱりこう皆さんの記憶に残るような作品を作れる未来にを目指したいというか、そこが目指す地ですかね。
What's your favorite part of Tokyo?
品川私
He
好
likes
きです。
Shinagawa.
What's your favorite place to travel to?
In Japan, Hokkaido.
日本だと北
And he
海道
loves
とか
seafood. He loves seafood.
こう海鮮物が美味しいので私好きですね。
What other Final Fantasy game was the biggest inspiration for the remake series?
やっぱ
Biggest inspiration for remake series. Challenging question, but I do think titles like Final Fantasy 13, which I worked on, did give me inspiration. Yeah. Okay. I mean, you worked on it, so obviously. If I hadn't seen Rebirth yet or played Remake, and all I heard was Final Fantasy 13 is our inspiration, I'd be like, oh, no. Because I didn't care for that, but I didn't play the other ones, remember? Music is good in 13. The combat system I don't even think was actually bad in 13. If I haven't played it in so long, but something about 13 just didn't mesh with me very well.
最近その自分がやってた「ファイナルファンタジー13」とかはやっぱり自分も関わってたから何かしらインスピレーションしたものはあるのかなとは思いますね。
How much
But yeah,
pride?
it's okay to be inspired by something too. It's not like it doesn't mean like, oh, we have to put in dumb stuff.
Does Cloud use in his hair?
3分の1ぐらいは使わない
1/3
と
of the
硬さにはならないです
To
よね。
get hair that hard.
Which Final Fantasy character has the best hair?
まあやっぱ男の人の
Barrett's hairstyle is very
すっ
sleek.
きりしてて
I
好
like
きで
it.
す。
Was Lightning in Final Fantasy 13 inspired by Cloud from Final Fantasy 7?
He says, was lightning inspired?
どうなんだろう。でもおそらく
I can't
そこは
precisely
キャラ
say
クターなので
Nomura
野村さんが
designs
デザインしてる
them, but I don't think there's a connection.
んですけど、多分そこに対してのつながりはないと思う。
Does Cloud realize that his last name is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy?
クラウド自体は気づいてね。
Cloud himself most likely doesn't realize, but of course there is the intent from the devs. Yeah.
開発ですね。開発側のメッセージはもちろんありますけど。
All right, let's be honest. Who is the coolest Final Fantasy protagonist?
セッツァーです。
Setzer from Final Fantasy VI.
What's the deal with Final Fantasy characters always losing their memories?
まあドラマチック
It's pretty dramatic, that's why I guess, and he laughs.
ドラマ性だからですかね。
Which character is the most different between Final Fantasy VII Original and Final Fantasy VII Remake series?
もう一番やっぱザックスじゃないですか。
Zack, yeah. Okay. Makes sense why he would say that, because Zack in the original game was barely a character. And finding out exactly what happens to him is a hidden scene that you could miss in the original. So now he's a full-blown character with tons of backstory from Crisis Core and tons of influence now in Rebirth. So yeah, I mean, I would say that character went from being, you know, just like a powerful but small detail to a full-blown character.
If all the Final Fantasy villains fought each other, who would come out on top?
ここは私
I
が
want
今
it to be
リメイ
Sephiroth.
クをやってる
Yeah,
ので
Sephiroth would kill all the other villains, basically, I guess. Okay.
セフィロスであってほしいですね。
Do we get to play as Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
Yes, we already
そ
know
うですね
that.
これプレイヤー
Yeah, he's playable.
操作できます。
Have you heard stories about Final Fantasy VII originally being developed for Nintendo 64?
I'm not quite sure. It's kind of funny he doesn't know that. But yeah, they did a demo of Final Fantasy VI, like just like a tech demo of Final Fantasy VI on Nintendo 64 as a way to like prep themselves for Final Fantasy VII, and then switched over to PlayStations because the discs had more space, I guess, had more of their type of hardware required for the type of story and details they wanted in a game. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. He doesn't know about that.
なるほど。私は分からないです。
Okay, well, even that aside, how many cartridges do you think it would take to fit Final Fantasy VII's original game on the N64?
まあ64個じゃないですか。
64 cartridges. Okay.
Do you think mainline Final Fantasy games will ever return to Nintendo consoles?
I'm not quite sure, but that is an appealing thing to think about. Does he mean just like they launch at the same time? I mean, I guess the Nintendo consoles would have to really up their hardware. I mean, have you seen PlayStation 5 Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? You know?
分からないですけど、
It's not gonna work on a
それも
Switch.
また魅力的な話ですね。
Does Barrett have a difficult time getting through security at the airport?
いや、
Cloud included. They probably can't get through. Yeah, giant gun and giant sword, probably not.
クラウドも含めて通れないですね、2人とも。
Coming into the remake series, what was the biggest change the team wanted to make?
I guess the biggest part is the action elements of the game. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was one of the things they. I mean, he's just kind of thinking off the cuff here too, so he's clearly not like his headspace is not like story wise, right? But action, yeah. And I love the combat. It's the hybrid system of action and the turn based. Really cool.
なんか一番はゲームをアクションにしたいっていうところですね。
Is Rebirth more open than Remake?
はい、
Yes, without a doubt.
間違いないです。
Is Rebirth's map bigger than Remake's?
はい、もう
He says yes. The remake map is going to look this small.
リメイクのワールドマップはもう
Yeah,
こんなぐらいになってる
this
と思います。
Or this
That's crazy, man. So he says like Midgar and remake is gonna look this small. Yeah, that's awesome.
side quests better in Rebirth?
そうですね。
Ooh, our side quests. Yes, from remake as well. Also, compared to other titles, they're very in depth. So he's even just saying they're even better than a lot of other titles, apparently, or at least comparable.
非常にこう
And there was an interview at some point where someone asked him about side quest, and he said something like, "Well, my favorite game for good side quests is The Witcher 3."
どのリメイクからもそうですし、他のどのタイトルに比べても非常によく作り込まれていると思っています。
Why such a focus on side content this time around?
まあやっぱりワールド
We really wanted players to explore the world map as thoroughly as they did in the original. I love that. I think that's a great awareness. So it's true. When we were younger and you were running around that map in Final Fantasy VII Original, it did feel huge. It felt like there were many possibilities out there. And the original Final Fantasy VII does have some of the best side content, I think, ever in a video game. So, like, think about it for a second. There are 2 optional characters who have their own side quests. Every character in the game has an ultimate weapon that you have to do something to unlock. There are secret caves where some of the most powerful materia in the game are only accessible by breeding and racing chocobos, which is a whole nother side content, right? There's everyone's limit break is unlockable through side quests. There are hidden scenes in the game that you can just totally miss, and the game doesn't have a quest marker or anything for you to follow to find them. You just have to know about them, and you just have to talk to your friends about them at school, or you have to get the strategy guide or something, and read about it first. Okay. Final Fantasy VII. Oh, and then there's the super bosses, right? Emerald and Ruby. And there are missable items in the game as well throughout the story. That's just off the top of my head. You could master all the materia if you wanted to grind it out. You could... there's the battle arena. Oh, I mean, that's a lot of side content. Right? That's a ton. So, that's from 1997. That is great, meaningful side quests that actually give you cool rewards and even cool story tidbits. So, there's even a section that's missable at the Icicle Inn where you literally see footage of Dr. Gast speaking with Ifalna, Aerith's mother, and learning more history about Jenova and the Ancients. Totally missable. Just side content.
ワールドマップの体験を原作通りにさせたかったっていうのがあります。
What does Biggs and Wedge still being alive mean for the story?
そうですね。
There are many layers to the story in this game. He just doesn't answer if they're alive or dead, or what that means.
やっぱりいろんなレイヤーが絡み合う展開になって。
So we'd like players to really experience it and enjoy it for themselves. Yeah. Yeah, he's not gonna tell you why or if they're alive or whatever.
でもその点は楽しんでもらいたいところではあります。
Did Jessie make it out of Final Fantasy VII Remake alive?
私もそう願ってますけど、どうでしょう。
I hope she did, but we shall see. Yeah, people have speculated. Max Dude always had the theory that we'd see her at the Gold Saucer in another timeline or something. We'll see.
Sure.
There was the VR little tidbit. If you guys are fully engaged in all of the interviews, there might be some kind of VR thing that shows her, but she might still be dead.
You ever go to a restaurant called Sector 7?
Yes.
Yes.
Just be careful ordering anything that comes on a plate.
気をつけます。
I'll be
But I
careful.
assume you would go to a bar called Seventh Heaven.
もちろんコスモキャニオンを
They're in Cosmo Canyon.
Have you ever seen the show Seventh Heaven?
わからないです。
Seventh. I haven't seen it. Yeah. I didn't really watch that a lot either when I was a kid, but aware of it. Let's just move on.
Have you ever considered putting a secret pinball elevator in the office?
いや、面白いですね。ボタン押したら出てくる。
He says that's pretty fun. That's a cool
面
idea.
白い。
Do you have a favorite arcade
Dun 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 dun.
machine?
私 UFO キャッチャー
I
大好き。
love crane games.
What's cooler, riding a motorcycle or snowboarding?
スノーボードですか。
He says snowboarding is cooler than riding a motorcycle. Okay, personal preference. I think as far as Final Fantasy VII goes, this motorcycles look pretty dang cool. But personally, I think I'd kill myself on a motorcycle. So, and I have learned to snowboard before, but haven't done so in 20 years. So, and it was a learning process. You can really get hurt doing that too. But it was a blast. I used to dream of snowboarding when I would be done with it, because that's how much fun it was. I would fantasize in my dreams about being able to snowboard again.
Does Final Fantasy VII Rebirth have snowboarding?
リバースでは
In
スノーボ
Rebirth,
ード
there was no snowboarding. Yeah, okay, interesting.
はないです。
Is Gold Saucer in Rebirth?
もちろん
Yeah.
Can you play the mini games?
もちろんたくさん
Yes, of course. We've prepared loads. Nice.
されてます。
What's the best mini game in Rebirth?
There's so many that we worked really hard on, but personally, I really like the card game. The card games in Final Fantasy games are always pretty sweet.
たくさんミニゲームあるんでどれもしっかり作ってるんです
The card game in 8 was always one of my favorites.
けど、まあ、カードゲームは個人的にやっぱり好きなゲームの一つです、
You could totally break the game, by the way, in Final Fantasy 8 by using cards and like converting them to items and stuff. There's a GF or a Guardian Force that has an ability to convert cards to items. And once you get that and you do a bunch of card collecting and stuff, you can just absolutely break the game wide open right from the beginning.
Which mini game from the original Final Fantasy VII received the biggest change for Rebirth?
まあ、チョコボレ
He says we've adapted the Chocobo race into a very modern racing game. So that's quite a big difference from the original. Dude, I'm excited about that. Chocobo racing in the original game is like just kind of a grind, and it's like the controls are really janky. Not the funnest. It was still like cool to do the whole quest for all that. But if this plays well, this could be really fun to upgrade chocobos and stuff, and then to consider what the rewards could be out in the world. If it works that way, you know, like leveling up your chocobos so that they have other abilities out in the world or can access different things in the world, I think that would just be excellent.
レースはやっぱり今風のレーシングゲームにしっかりと作り変えているので、そこは原作からだいぶ変わっていると思いますね。
Is the CPR minigame still in Rebirth?
あそこは
We changed it slightly, so please stay tuned. So it's in there. Okay. That was always so weird. Also, CPR is supposed to start with chest compressions if somebody's lost a pulse. Not just and you blow in one big breath and then wait to see if they're alive. So yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be a little different in this.
こうちょっと表現を変えているので、ちょっと楽しみにしてください。
Does your save data from Remake transfer into Rebirth?
直接的には
Not directly, but certain portions are carried over. They've already addressed this in other interviews, like if you've got a save for intermission, I think you can get Ramu. And if you have a save for the remake, you can get like what was it? I don't know, Ifrit or something. I'm not sure. I can't remember which ones. Or Leviathan? Was it Leviathan?
そう実は一部で引き継ぐところもあったりします。
But yeah, that's another thing here. That was a big question before. A lot of people were like, oh, you should be able to carry over your data, you know, from Remake Part 1 right to Remake Part 2. And I always thought there's no way they're going to do that. Because they've said each game is its own entity. And the power scaling, like level scaling, is just going to get out of control especially with the inventory and items and materia that you have at the end of Remake Part 1. Especially if you like grinded it out, you know? So it doesn't make sense to me that they would allow you to do that, right? Also, just, you know, logically speaking, there's no in-game reference to the amount of materia that you have or the items or weapons that you carry. So they're not bound by any logic to keep those things. Also, how is it that every character has 6 different weapons as well as every type of armor you've collected, as well as 300 different materia just sitting on them at all times that you can change to? There's no inner working logic for that, so you're not bound by any logic to keep it. Also, the cutscenes that are like pre-rendered, all that kind of stuff, like the CGI type cutscenes, they always depict Cloud with the Buster Sword every time. So the game assumes that even though you can collect other weapons, the main sword of Cloud Strife is the Buster Sword for the entirety of his journey. You know, like that's just kind of what the game is assuming, at least. So they're not bound by anything to keep, you know, they're not bound by any inner workings or inner logic or lore to keep the inventory intact from part 1 to part 2.
How safe can Sephiroth get?
セフィロスは
Plus, you could always just argue, well, they went through the singularity and just lost all the stuff. right there. Okay. Other people speculated, oh, Yuffie's going to steal it from them. Maybe, but I don't think so. So he says Sephiroth really does care for Cloud at all times. As a result, maybe he is always safe. Well,
で引き継ぐところもあったりします。
Just how safe can Sephiroth get?
セフィロスは
is that like, I think that was he's doing a pun, the interviewer there, because Sephiroth at the end of the game of the original is called Safer Sephiroth, meaning, and he's joking about the word safer, meaning like more safe. So he's saying, how safe can Sephiroth get? Can he get safer? You know? And I think this question goes over his head here because of the language barrier, because he says Sephiroth really does care for Cloud at all times. So as a result, maybe he is always safe. And it's like, what? You know, not a very great question. Maybe needed some clarification that he was just joking around.
こうなんだかんだ言ってクラウドのこと大好きなんで
And his answer, maybe he's always safe. He's just saying, like, Sephiroth has a purpose for Cloud, so it's not like he's going to kill Cloud outright, you know, at any time. We'll see.
結果として常に安全なのかもしれないですね。
I think a certain party member might disagree.
パーティーメンバー
Aerith.
See, there's an example of the language. Party member. He goes, party member? He goes, Aerith.
ああそういうことか。Yes.
Yeah, maybe Aerith would disagree that he's always safe.
Mainline Final Fantasy game has the best combat system.
はいやっぱり
He says, I think we can confidently bring the Final Fantasy VII Remake battle system into that conversation. Yeah. Final Fantasy VII Remake combat system, one of the best in the entire series of Final Fantasy. Absolutely.
ファイナルファンタジー7リメイクのバトルシステムは
And just talking about the original game for a sec, the original Final Fantasy VII's combat system was fabulous, right? But if you play that again, and many times as I have, it's really easy. It's like I've beaten that game with Cloud just using the Buster Sword. So it's like OG FF7 combat. A lot of people they just want a remaster, who are disgruntled by some of the changes and additions in the remake. And they're like, I just want a remaster, just make the graphics look nice. And I'm like, no, man. Like, that would be so disappointing, at least on a gameplay level as well, because it's so easy. And for that reason, if I replay Final Fantasy VII OG, I usually play it modified now with mods. Like the new threat mod is excellent, rebalances everything, every item, every character even has innate new abilities and stuff. There's a new leveling system in addition to regular leveling. Every single item has been re-itemized and rebalanced. So has every single materia, and there are new materia in the game. So, and new side quests and new bosses, and the difficulty is harder, and all of the AI of the enemies has been revamped. And there's even new enemy skills, new accessories. So like you can literally create builds in Final Fantasy VII New Threat. And there's a 2.0 that is out. And there's even a hard mode that you can choose from the beginning for it. And there are 2 story scenarios that you can play through, A or B. And each one has some different story things that happen. And like B, for example, every single boss is different than A. Like, wow, does that not blow your mind? If you play that New Threat 2.0 for Final Fantasy VII OG with the mods for the HD backgrounds, like the AI upscaled HD backgrounds with the new character models and stuff, it is an absolutely fantastic remaster that is better than anything Square probably would have ever put out, or if they just upped the graphics a little, you know, it's better. Trust me. So anyone disgruntled by remake and you just wanted a remaster, there you go. It's already out there and it's excellent.
非常に自信を持って送れるものになっていると思います。
Do you have a favorite fake rumor about the original Final Fantasy VII?
エアリスが
He says, I hear a lot about Aerith coming back to life. And that's something that's very interesting to hear. Yeah, that was always a big one. Everyone always used to say, like, there's a way to bring Aerith back to life if you do a certain set of tasks, basically, in the game. You can get her back. And there's that scene, if you go back to Midgar after you get the key and after she's gone, you go into the church and there's some kids in the flower garden. and you see a ghost of Aerith it like flickers and then she like disappears. You know, kind of interesting. You know what else about that? In the end of the intermission DLC, when Zack enters the church, you know, you do see two people in the flower bed there who, you know, oddly have similar clothing on as those two kids that were in the OG. Kind of interesting.
なんか生き返るみたいなのはまさによく聞いていましたね。
If you could change your name to any Final Fantasy characters, what would you choose?
Nanaki.
Were you aware that Genova Chen from that game company changed his name to Genova because of Final Fantasy VII?
Because I didn't know, really?
Would you ever remake Advent Children?
見てみたい。
I'd like to see that for sure. I hope that Advent Children is being remade, but it'll be in part 3 of Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy. I hope that since we seem to have defeated those 3 like whispers that come directly from the Arbiter, and it turns out that those are the manifestations of Lazu, Kadaj, and Yaz or whatever. I hope that, because it says that they are manifesting in order to protect the future timeline that gave shape to them. So I'm kind of hoping that, like, since, you know, we're trying to change fate or whatever, and that this kind of Advent Children stuff is somehow going to be incorporated, actually. We'll see.
ですね、確かに。
Were you aware that the Marvel's director Nia DaCosta used Final Fantasy VII Advent Children as her pitch for the movie?
はい、ニュースになってる
That's kind of weird.
の見ました。
Name an emotion.
熱量、
Passion.
Name a random object.
マウス、
Mouse.
Give me a descriptive word.
美しい、
Beautiful.
Name a Square Enix franchise.
クロノトリガー。
Chrono Trigger. So, whoa. So, like, just off the top of his head, he just tells him, name a Square Enix franchise. And he doesn't say Final Fantasy. He says Chrono Trigger. Dude, Chrono Trigger remake would blow my mind. Just the announcement of it would be like, you know. Chrono Trigger is excellent. Chrono Trigger is, like, perfect. The music alone is worth playing that game for. Wow. It's just kind of interesting that he says Chrono Trigger. That reminds me of something Tim Rogers once said. You'll know, I referenced him in my theory video where he was like, I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is a sequel to Chrono Trigger or something like that, you know.
What's the strangest game title Square Enix has ever come up with?
レーシングラグーン。
Racing
Can you think of a
Lagoon.
game name that was rejected?
それはいえ
I can't disclose that.
ないです。
What if we just made up our own title?
何に対して？
Yeah, I actually,
He says, oh, like right now?
we already did it actually. How does Chrono Trigger Beautiful Passionate Mouse?
Chrono Trigger Beautiful Passionate Mouse.
そうですね。
Our publisher might give us a scolding.
集英社さんから怒られそうですね。
What is the third game in the remake series called?
それは
This is kept inside Nomura-san's head. So he doesn't even know?
野村さんの頭の中にしかないですね。
Whoa. Is he being serious there? Like, he's like, I don't even know. What? It's got to be like a something, right? So, some people have said like Requiem, because a Requiem is a song for like a funeral of some kind, right? Or at least it's supposed to signify death. And then others are like Reclaim, you know? I always thought that, like, even though they've used it already for Crisis Core, Reunion could still work, I guess. But then I also thought about Reverse. And it could be a play on words of, you know, universe or whatever kind of verse. Reverse is also similar to Rebirth, because Rebirth reverses death. And also in the Japanese, apparently, I've been told from other people, just watching other content and stuff, that Rebirth and Reverse actually sound the same in Japanese, if that's correct. So that's kind of interesting. Reverse could also signify, if there's an idea that we're trying to correct the timeline or trying to go back to something. Maybe we're trying to reverse it. Maybe we're trying to reverse what the damage Sephiroth has done. Yeah, so I thought maybe part 3 could be called Reverse. Final Fantasy 7 Remake, Rebirth, and Reverse. Maybe. I don't know if I love it or not, but I could see that making sense. So, yeah, let's see what else he says.
But if I guess it, you'll tell me, right?
それはお答え
He says I can't answer that.
できないです。
So it sounds like he does know it.
Reimagine?
いまいちかと。
He said not too good. Oh, here he's gonna...
Reframed?
それも
I don't like that one either.
なんかしっくりこないですね。
Reloaded?
なんか聞いたこ
Reloaded. I've heard that one before, like The Matrix.
となるような。
Returns?
まだしっくりこ
Doesn't sound quite right either.
ないですね。
Cloud returns?
Maybe we can go with that.
それでいいかも
He's
しれない。
like, all right, we're done with this.
Aerith returns?
なんかすごいメッ
Wow, that's very loaded, he says.
セージ性が込められてますね。
Lightning returns?
そうしましょ
So not
He goes, let's go with that.
record keeper.
う。この時はまだ
No, we can't do that.
ダメですね。
Revengeance?
リベンジ
Seems like we'll get a scolding from ethics. You know what? I'm just going to say, I hate ethics committees. Not a fan.
なんかどんどんなんか倫理から怒られそうな感じの。
What's the deal with guns in Final Fantasy? Sometimes they kill someone, other times they just take down a little bit of HP.
あれ私も知りたいんですよね。
I want to know too. Yeah, you just have to suspend your belief on that.
What was the biggest point of debate within the team when making Final Fantasy VII Remake?
やっぱりこ
I suppose we really debated about how in-depth we'd go into depict and illustrate these certain moments.
うどこまでこだわってこう表現を上げるかっていうところはやっぱ議論になりましたね。
Was there an idea for remake that was scrapped because it strayed too far from the original?
Yes, we had a lot of those. Wow.
その予定はよくありますね。
How do you pronounce this character's name?
ゲットシー
Getushi. Oh, man. So many people are going to be like, oh, I told you.
What was up with their cameo in Remake?
あれはこ
I think that was a lot of fan service. Yeah. But the fans didn't like it, though, dude. So that was not a good, it was not a very well-timed cameo. It wasn't. It definitely wasn't.
うファンサービスの意味もすごく強いと思います。
What's the best RPG series outside of Final Fantasy?
私はウィッチャーシリーズが
He says, I like The Witcher.
好きです。
Why did Final Fantasy VI resonate with you so much?
まあ、やっぱりこ
I was in middle school and I didn't have many ways to experience this fantasy setting.
う中学生とかだったんで自分でゲーム体験実際に体験できるファンタジーみたいなものって
So that was extremely impactful and impressionable to me. Yeah, I already spoke about it a little bit for me. The overall atmosphere and music and heaviness of the story at a young age I thought was pretty cool. I actually didn't really fully understand the story of Final Fantasy VII as a child. It went way over my head. I understood that like the planet was dying and like the Mako was bad and that Cloud doesn't understand who he is, but like even the twists about Cloud, you know, and about Sephiroth telling him that he's a puppet. I really, as a kid, I couldn't really grasp exactly who Cloud is. Like, I didn't really get that he's actually like a kid from Nibelheim. As a kid, I was like, oh, so he's like a clone. You know, that's what I thought. And that was because I was a kid and I was reading a novel basically as a kid playing that game, trying to figure it out. And I think that's when, once I played the game when I was a little older, like as a teenager or even in my early 20s, I think that's when Final Fantasy VII became my favorite game of all time. It was once I went through it and like really read everything and really understood it, and I was just like, dude, this is the greatest game ever. Like, what in the heck? How did I miss some of these tidbits, you know? And if you watch my theory video that that's on my channel, you'll see that I really that might come through a little bit with how familiar I am with the original script and everything.
やっぱりその当時なかったので非常に衝撃的でしたね。
Is that one still your favorite?
やっぱり心に残
It's one that remains in my heart.
ってる作品ですね。
Do you think that most people's favorite Final Fantasy game is the one that got them into the series in the first place?
かもしれないです
Maybe so. I think that's likely.
ね。なんかその割合は高い気はしますね。
What is the biggest improvement from remake to rebirth?
I think the biggest change is the freedom players have to choose their own gameplay experience. Kind of doesn't say much, you know, but it's nice that there's lots of things to do.
やっぱりユーザーが自ら選択できるゲーム体験っていうところが非常に変わっていると思います。
How do you think people are going to react to that scene? You know the one. How much
He just goes, ah. Okay.
of Rebirth was developed in parallel with remake?
Ooh, that's a great question. He says the development did not overlap, so it was not done in parallel. But as for the scenario,
開発自体は同時じゃなくすぐスワップしてるんですけど、シナリオは野島さんの方に並行しても
Nojima was considering it and writing it as we were working on remake. Nice. All right, I think that's nice because that means the vision is there already. And it's not like, oh, people didn't like that, so we got to change everything now, right? It's not like they're reacting like they did with Star Wars, okay? Which there could have been a healthy blend of that for Star Wars. I'm talking about Disney Star Wars. Whereas Disney Star Wars had completely conflicting visions, first of all, where The Last Jedi was written without the Force Awakens even being out in theaters yet, I'm pretty sure. And there was no rewrites or anything. And then there was backlash, and then they brought J.J. Abrams back, and he basically just took all of the, fan reaction and then just tried to clean it up and just tie it up. It was a disaster in my opinion. So I like that Nojima, who is one of the original writers, was still just writing and on this thread. I think that's great. They don't bring in somebody else and go, all right, well, here, you now just take the reins and just clean up the pieces. It's still the original writer.
書いてもらっていました。
Did you ever just consider calling it Remake 2, or is that just too simple?
そこは
We did think of that.
なかったですね。
What do you think the series would have been called if it wasn't Hironobu Sakaguchi's final attempt?
Mako. The series wouldn't have been called Final Fantasy? Is that what he's saying? It would have been called Mako?
Will there ever truly be a Final Fantasy?
Tricky question.
難しい質問だな。それは分からないけど、
Why don't we make this question final?
もうこの質問がファイナルでいいんじゃないでしょうかね。
Perfect. Thank you so much.
いいですね。
Yeah, so he's like, can we be done now?
大丈夫でしたか？
Okay. All right. So, cool. Hope you guys liked that. I am working on the next theory video for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Just so you know. Thank you everyone who's been commenting, liking, subscribing to the channel for my Final Fantasy VII stuff. That video did extremely well. And I think it really is good preparation for you. If you haven't watched it, it is good preparation for you going into Rebirth. So you can get familiar with some of the themes from the original and see how Remake is really introducing some of those things early and stuff. And I'm looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it. All right, guys. See you later. Bye.